Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. Welcome back to the continuation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie reviews as we continue with the third movie of the franchise, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, Turtles in Time. To be completely honest, probably one of the weakest in the franchise, but let's deep dive into it here. So with this one, it follows up with the Secret of the Ooze movie, and like I said, my least favorite out of the whole trilogy of the OG Turtle movies. It kept the same tone of like the campiness, the cheesiness, the more friendly tone nature of the movie, but not only just like the storyline, but the costumes just really looked more like Halloween costumes than anything else. But let's get started with the movie in itself, because the movie starts with like the opening title sequence of like a feudal Japan battle scene where we introduced to 1603, the time period there, and then we get the opening sequence of like these turtles just dancing in the lair, dancing and like training with their weapons. And now I'm just going to bring it up right now because like I said, the costumes itself, because like for some reason the movie is a lot brighter, like a sort of like lighting in this movie, you get to see more of like the turtles, and with that it comes at the cost of seeing the outfits itself. The animatronics with the eyes, the mouth, it just didn't look natural, it just didn't look right, and like the costumes itself just really didn't look that well on camera with that lighting. So it just looks really bad when it comes to the turtles themselves. But you just see them training, dancing, with Splinter in the background just enjoying the show, and then we quickly cut away to feudal Japan, 1603 Japan, where you've got this character Kenshin having this confrontation with his father, the father being the daimyo, basically calling his son a traitor. And that's when his son sees this time specter and the scroll where the turtles are showing on the scroll. We come to find out that they're actually like demons that have been there for like centuries, that took out the previous daimyos, so they're like folklore. But he gets a time scepter and he does something where he just magically like moves in time, where then we get cut to present day with April about to go on her vacation. So she's bought presents for everybody. She somehow managed to get the time scepter. I don't think they really explored where she got it from or whatever it was, just from like an antique shop. But she has this time scepter, and then all of a sudden her and that Kenshin character switch places. So she's now in 1603 Japan and this Kenshin is in the middle of the lair with the turtles. And so after the same routine of once somebody realizes the turtles are alive, faints, wakes up, they realize that they have to now go back in time to go save April. And this whole plot, it just takes like a massive U-turn if you're comparing it to the other two movies, where you've got like the Shredder and the Shredder's revenge and finding out about the ooze and that kind of stuff from the first two movies, to now all of a sudden going back in time. Now I know the turtles go on some crazy adventures from like the animated shows, triceratons and tribunals and all that kind of information traveling fast forward in the 2003 animated show version, but this one, it just, I don't know, like the story just didn't work well for me. But they realize that they now have to go back in time. Mikey obviously answering the burning questions of having to wear these shorts so that the people that they are going to switch places with have some outfits, because they're basically naked as turtles. So he makes sure he puts on shorts. So he's got great thinking when it comes to that. But just before they do switch places with these people, we come to see the return of Casey Jones, the actor returning, reprising his role from the very first movie. Now, if you thought Casey was removed from the second movie because of his nature, because he wasn't a good role model for kids, too violent, all that kind of stuff, so they have him return and just bench him for the whole movie, which is just a really missed opportunity. He was basically the babysitter of the movie, but we'll get to that part once that part of the movie does arrive. Once they do switch places, the plan originally was for them to switch places to people that are priests in the feudal Japan era. However, they get switched places to the high guards of the daimyo, so they're ending up in this battlefield. They're all riding horses, and Mikey ends up on his horse into the bushes, into the forest, whereas the other three separate from him. Also, when it comes to this movie too, I feel like the humor just didn't land for me. There was maybe, I think, 2 lines that worked well, but for the rest of them, like the humor just didn't land for me this time around when it comes to the lines and the delivery and the quips that each turtle was coming up with. But since they are the high guard of the daimyo, they're able to get into the castle. April, who once you did get first transported into Japan, was being casted as a witch for her magic and like her little radio player, so she gets sent to the dungeon. So the turtles end up finding the dungeon. They manage to rescue April, not without a little bit of fighting. Now, in terms of the fighting of this movie, there wasn't that many, maybe towards the third act, but with this one, again, the choreograph was slightly done well compared to the first movie. We got to see better use of their weapons, even though it may not have been as much as I wanted compared to the first movie. We still got a little bit more than we bargained for when it comes to them using their weapons, but they were able to rescue April, go down this chute, and end up in the mud, along with the old version of Casey, which honestly, there was generally no connection from the old Casey, from the 1603 from the 16th century Casey to the present day Casey. There was honestly no connections. It could have just been played by anybody else, so I'm not sure what that whole point was for that. They end up escaping. They end up in this river place where they get ambushed by the villagers, but they manage to find common ground. They manage to find out that Mikey is with the villagers. That's where he was, but it's basically staying with the villagers. But then the village itself gets ambushed by the British guys that are working with like the Japanese daimyo people. So the turtles come and rescue them. The turtles come and like fight with them. They're recognized as like demons because of their nature of how they look. Mikey ends up going and saving this kid from a fire who's called Yoshi. Now I thought it was going to be Master Yoshi, like Master Splinter's Master Yoshi, but they never brought anything into light when it comes to that. No mention of it, no hints about it. So this could have just been a random kid named Yoshi. But I mean, why go through all that trouble if you're going to just have no connection? Why not just go for a different name then? So that kind of like bugged me, and I don't know the answer to it. If you do know, let me know in the comment section down below. But they end up saving this kid, but he sort of fades out. Leo does CPR with him, and like I said, with the costume and the outfit, it just did not look right having Leonardo the Turtle's mask doing mouth to mouth with this kid. So now that they rescued the villagers, the plan is for them to rebuild a scepter from scratch. So meanwhile, while they're doing that, you just have them hanging around the village. You see a really nice moment with Yoshi and Ralph, where Ralph gives him the yo-yo, sort of like a mentoring gift basically. And that's where we come to find out that Yoshi and the family actually hid the original scepter because they didn't want them to leave. They wanted them to stay and fight for the village itself, because we come to find out that the British people, like that guy Walker, who honestly is a villain, wasn't that strong, not a great tough villain for me, I would have to say, but him and the daimyo are making a deal so that they have guns to take down the villagers. So that's the reason why they hid the scepter, because they want the turtles to come and stay and fight for the village. But we've got old Casey, who is a spy who actually captures April. And so the turtles go back to the castle, go back to rescue Mitsu, who is like the female character. So she gets rescued. She has confrontation by the daimyo and the guard. The turtles are there to face off with the guards. Again, fight choreograph, fight sequence, pretty well done. And they go rescue the prisoners. So you have outside of the castle this big fight ensuing, hand-to-hand combat. Leo takes on the daimyo and just ends up cutting his hair, which I don't know, I just thought that was pretty lame. And then he ends up cutting the rope where the bell just lands on the daimyo. Like the daimyo itself, like the presence just wasn't there. The villains in this movie just weren't as threatening or intimidating as they could have been, and it felt more comedic than anything else. The tone of the movie just really wasn't that well structured. So with the daimyo inside the bell, you've got the British people coming in with their guns. Leo tries to intimidate them and trick them, thinking that they're demons and that if they do shoot them, the bullets are just going to bounce right off them. But that doesn't end up working, because that Walker guy ends up shooting a cannon at them, only for the turtles to go hide in their shell, so that the Walker guy misses his shot and he ends up like blasting the bell. That's where you see like the daimyo reappearing with his hair all messed up. And so with this plan failing, the Walker guy, this British guy, ends up running away with the scepter, only for then the turtles just basically chase him. He ends up throwing the scepter where Mikey's able to catch it, and then the old Casey, who was sort of the good guy, then bad guy, now good guy again, ends up shooting the cannon at the direction of Walker, basically doing exactly what they did in the first movie when it comes to Shredder, but this one done just really poorly, him falling off of the castle into the ocean. But the visual effects just didn't look that great. And so now that the village is saved, Mikey and Ralph wanted to stay in Japan, but they were convinced not to by Donnie and by April. The reasoning is pretty understandable, to be honest. Like, they don't they're not seen as like freaks, they're seen as like demons, they're seen as like people that can like help save the village, whereas if they're in New York they have to hide in the sewers. But April and Madoni managed to convince them to come back because they're brothers, they need them, they need the family. But before we do talk about them switching, so in terms of Casey, like present day Casey, he was end up babysitting here. So my issue with this is that you got Splinter in the back burner just like as a background character, which compare him to the first two movies, it's a complete night and day shift. And then you've got Casey hanging out with the people like the high guards, the people that the turtles switched bodies with. Casey's just babysitting them, teaching them about hockey, going into like clubs and bars, like having them eat crisps or chips or whatever you want to call that, desserts, that kind of stuff. So Casey's just sort of like there, like you didn't need him in the movie whatsoever, so he was just so toned down and it was such a shame. But they end up switching the bodies. For some reason Mikey ends up missing the switch, and so the turtles come back to the lair without Mikey, only for like 10 seconds, because then the body switch happens and Mikey does appear, so that tension lasts for 10 seconds. So I'm not sure what the whole point of that was. Mikey could have just grabbed the hand just in time and then landed in the lair with all of them, so I'm not sure the build up for that was. So then that Kenshi character returns to feudal Japan, is with that Mitsu girl, so they sort of get their happily ever after. The turtles are now back, but Mikey's sort of bummed out, and the best way to cheer him up was for Splinter to do an Elvis impersonation and for them to dance. So you're comparing it to the previous two movies where Splinter had some great lines to end the movie, but this one just felt very flat. Like I don't know, like this movie itself overall was not a great movie for me. It really dipped in terms of the quality of this movie when you're comparing it to the first two. Like the first one, incredible, a great way to introduce the turtles, tonally incredible. Second movie, whereas the tonal shift changes, it's more campy, cheesy. I enjoyed the movie, I had a fun time with it, but with this one I was honestly like a bit bored during the movie. I kind of felt disappointed and lackluster with the plot itself. So this movie just felt like a letdown to me. Like again, Splinter and Casey, their character arcs, and just feeling like background characters. The humor didn't land at times. The plot itself just felt really out of place. And then of course the visual effects and looks of the turtles really looked out of whack compared to the other two movies. So yeah, this one just really felt like a letdown. If you have seen the movie, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about it. Were you entertained? Did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comment section down below, because for me, I just wasn't a huge fan of it. But this sort of ends the trilogy of the original movie. Next up we've got is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 2007. Some quite interesting Easter eggs that they also thrown in there. So keep an eye out on the channel. Subscribe if you are new to the channel to don't miss out on those reviews. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. This is YK Reviews. Peace.